Good.
Good deal. Okay, well, thank you all who are joining us tonight. My name is Blake Dole. I'm Special Services Coordinator for District 76. So my role here at the district is to support all of our students who have unique learning needs and just make sure that they have access to the general education curriculum and have the support that they need to be successful in schooling. So I'm glad that you're here joining us tonight. The topic of our presentation is just a general overview of what special education is. So we're just starting off nice and basic, kind of giving you the ins and outs of the process for special education and just starting to build some groundwork, some ground level knowledge about what it is. So today I have Dr. Joyce Powell with me, who is a special education consultant. She has served many years in different school districts in the special education field. So I'll let her just say hello real quick here.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here. This is a great opportunity for me to assist Blake along the way in Diamond Lake. And I did some work last year in the district, and I just want to comment on what a great place it is. And I feel really lucky to be able to participate.
Thank you, Dr. Powell. Dr. Powell and I have been working, side by side through a lot of this year. She's been supporting some of the efforts that I've been making, and then I've been taking a lot of the information that she was able to gather last year through her work with the district. And we're really focused on supporting our special education staff and just helping them to grow in their abilities and to support all of our students in the district. So we've done a lot of cool things, providing increased professional development for teachers and related service providers and learning associates. As well as just really focusing on our communication and making it consistent across the district. So also tonight, I have Daisy Carrera with me. She's our District 76 Community Liaison. Daisy, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Blake. Like Mr. Dole just mentioned, my name is Daisy Carrera, and I am the Community Liaison for District 76. Just working with, doing a lot of community outreach work within our district and making sure that all of the communication that goes out in our district allows for transparency in both languages, English and Spanish, but also advocating for everybody across the board. So I'm just here for that support and just to listen in. And if anybody has any questions in Spanish as well, it's in both languages, but again, just allowing for the transparency and communication for our families.
All right, thank you, Daisy. We're gonna go ahead and get rolling here. So first, I just want to cover kind of what is special education. So just the beginning level information here. Special education is federally regulated through something that we like to call the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, as you may hear it referred. Essentially, what this act outlines for students with special needs, that they would it provides or outlines that for the district to provide specially designed instruction that is designed to meet a specific student's needs, whatever they may look like in the school setting. This is really targeted at meeting that student where they are at and supporting them. This is to be provided at no additional cost to the parents. So this is an area that we refer to as FAPE, or free and appropriate public education. So these services that we talk about within special education are to be provided, like I said, at no cost to the parents. And special education includes adapting things like the content being taught, the methodology, the way it's being taught, and the instructional delivery. It's all about creating access to the curriculum for students and giving them what they need to be successful and grow as a child. So that's really, as special educators, we're really working on just delivering to each individual student what they need to support them throughout their educational journey. Just a couple of acronyms I want to point out before we really get rolling. I know I talked about the first two already. So the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and Free and Appropriate Public Education. The next one is IEP, which stands for our Individualized Education Plan. This is the plan that is developed for all students who receive special education services. It just specifically outlines, the students' current levels of functioning, the goals that they're working towards, the supports that are being provided, and those services and placement, those different pieces that are being put into place to support that child's learning. The next one is the LRE. So this is what we refer to as our least restrictive environment. And it's something that all districts work diligently to to make sure that students are being provided with LRE. Essentially, our goal is to make sure that students have maximum access to their typically developing peers in the general education curriculum to the maximum extent possible. So wherever it's appropriate and meaningful for that student to be in and around their general education peers, we want to make sure that that's happening. And LRE sets out that protection for students. Next is ESY, or extended school year. So this is a summer program that is specifically designed for students who receive special education services, and it's aimed at helping them to maintain their progress that they made over the school year. So a lot of times when we take these big gaps or these big breaks, such as summer break, we see students lose some of the things they had gained, and it takes a while for them to recoup that information and those skills. So ESY really targets for students the opportunity to continue to maintain that information and take out some of that recoupment period that might be present if a student didn't have that access. And then the last one that we'll talk about right now is LEA, or that's your local education agency. So that just refers to the local school district that the student attends. You may see, if you have a child who's in special education, there's always a LEA representative, and that person is representing the school district at that IEP meeting, and being able to make those decisions and help and guide programming for students. So let's dive into the process for special education. So this is a graphic that was pulled right out of our special ed brochure. This is available on our district website under the special services section. And it just kind of outlines the process of special education, as well as on another page within that brochure, some of the team members that may be involved, which we'll talk about shortly. But as you can see, it's a pretty well-defined process. We start, at number one with that evaluation, and then we look through analyzing the students' needs, determining their eligibility, and then if they're eligible, looking at creating that individualized plan and reviewing. There's a certain rhythm that's in place that we'll talk about later, but basically making sure that we're consistently reviewing and making sure that the way we're programming for students is still being successful. So step one is that request for an evaluation. So this basically how it's outlined is a request for an evaluation is a formal process that can be completed by a parent, guardian, or a teacher. And it basically outlines the feeling that there needs to be a special education evaluation for a child based on that child's current progress and functioning in the classroom. Like I said, this can be done by the parent or the teacher. In a lot of cases, especially if a student is, in the school system, has been participating for a while, they may be working through something we call MTSS, a multi-tier system of supports, or RTI, which is our response to intervention. Both of these systems are big acronyms and big words, but essentially the goal of either one of them is to really identify a student's current functioning, provide necessary intervention, and then assess that a student's making progress. And if a student is still struggling, or we're not able to, close the gap for those students, then we start to look at some of the other supports that may need to be provided, and special education is one of those. So following that request, the district will provide a response in terms of that request for evaluation. So this could be, obviously there's two potential answers. There's yes, let's do it. We need to do an evaluation. It's necessary. Or no, we don't feel that it's necessary based on the information that we have. Either way, the district decides they will provide a reason, or we will provide a reason for that decision, so that the parents are informed, as well as providing the parents with their parental rights in regards to special education as well moving forward. If we deem that the evaluation is necessary, we move into something that's called a domains meeting. And what happens at this meeting, the team gets together, which we'll talk about all of our team members on the next slide, but the team will get together and really talk about that student in specific, and what we know about that student and how they're performing in school currently. And then we'll start to dive into what we want to know, or what we need to know more about, so that we can really make an educated, well-informed decision related to special education eligibility. And then we talk about in what ways we'll get that information. This is all done in those domains that I mentioned at the beginning. There's 7 of them. We're looking at a student's academic functioning, their functional performance, their communication ability, their cognitive functioning, their current health history, as well as their hearing and vision abilities, their motor abilities, and then that social emotional component is also in play. So all those things are looked at. It can be kind of a complicated process, but as you start to work with the team, they'll walk you through it and help kind of explain what each of those are and what they're hoping to do. And then at the end, before we can begin evaluation, it's that parent's decision to provide consent so that we can move forward and conduct the evaluation as explained to the team or by the team. So I know I've been talking a lot about team members. This is just a quick list of those who would be involved. It's important that parents and guardians are at the top because they're a vital team member in this process. They should be given multiple opportunities to provide their input and collaborate with the team as they plan for the educational experience for their child. We also look at having a special education teacher, somebody who is trained and skilled in utilizing different educational strategies and techniques to help students learn in ways that might be a little bit different than your general education teacher. But that gen ed teacher is also part of this process because they hold that general education curriculum information that's really important. They can help us kind of understand that gen ed setting and how a student may be successful and how we could support a child in that setting. Other team members involved could be the speech language pathologist or therapist, the social worker, the occupational and physical therapist, the school psychologist, the school nurse, and the hearing itinerant. These are all members of our current team here in District 76. They're not always involved. It really depends on the individual student. I know that we have a select variety or select few students that have hearing impairments, so they would receive services from the hearing itinerant. But that service is not typically provided to all students. It's always comes back to the individual need for the child. So once we get consent from the family, we have 60 school days to complete that evaluation. And it's important to note that during that evaluation period, that student is still being given different interventions and strategies to help them be successful and succeed. It's not like they're just, waiting for that potential eligibility and not getting any support. We're still working through some of that MTSS or that RTI process, supporting that child while we conduct the evaluation. This 60-day timeline is a maximum timeline. You may be involved in an evaluation at a time that doesn't necessarily go that length. It's all dependent on what's being conducted. There may be a case, just for an example, that we're looking at adding a social work service to a child who already has special education. So to do that, we're going to go through the evaluation process, but most likely we would only look at that social emotional domain. So that would probably, in most situations, take less time to complete and come back to the table and discuss those results. This evaluation could potentially include standardized tests, some rating scales that would be conducted by parents, by staff members that work with the child, in some cases the student themselves, some observations being conducted by team members, interviews, much like the rating scales, interviews of the staff members, parents, possibly the child, depending on what we're looking at. And there's some other options as well in there. The goal of this evaluation is to compile all that information for us and prepare it for the eligibility meeting. So as we start to look at whether a child is eligible for special education, we want to make sure we have that information ready to discuss at our next step, which is the eligibility meeting. This meeting is going to involve all those team members that were involved in the process. So everyone who collected information, who has a part in this, is going to come back together, and we're going to look at what was found. So we're going to discuss all of those different pieces, all those evaluations that were conducted. And we're going to look at the student's strengths. We're going to see what the student really excels at. Where are those relative strengths, the things that they're succeeding with. And we're going to look at the student's challenges. So those areas that are difficult for that child. And then most importantly, we're going to look at the educational impact. So whenever we're making eligibility determinations, we always like to keep that in mind. Whatever that suspected eligibility may be, it's important that we remember the impact that it is having on that child's educational experience. And when we're looking at determining whether a student is eligible, there are 14 potential categories that a child may be eligible for special education. This is the list of all 14, just so you can see them. There's a lot of information out there about each one, and honestly, we could spend a whole night just going through each of the different categories and what that looks like, how we might support those child under that category in the educational setting. But just for tonight's purposes, I just wanted to kind of share those different categories with all of you. And then the boldface ones are categories that are present right now within our district. So currently we have students who qualify under autism. We also have students qualifying under developmental delay. That one's important to note. You'll see it a lot at the primary building. That eligibility is able to be used up until a child turns 10, so through their 9th year. And at that point, then we need to determine what other eligibility best represents the child. There's emotional disability, as I mentioned, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, other health impairment, specific learning disability, and then speech language impairment. The thing that can happen here when you're looking at eligibility is it is potential that a student would qualify under 2. We would call that a primary and a secondary. The key here is that we're really identifying kind of that base level of knowledge about that child. So we're really looking at these categories, walking through the paperwork as a team, and trying to find the one that best represents the unique needs for that student. We always like to talk about and use the example of a child who may move somewhere to a new district. And the key is when we write these IEPs and complete an evaluation, we really want to make sure we have a good representation of a student. So if you were to move with your family and a student enrolled in a new district, we want them to have the accurate information to be able to program effectively right away for that child. So there's no gap in the educational experience for the student. So once we determine if a student is eligible for special education, we're going to look at that individualized education plan. So like I said, an important thing again to remember here is that plan is individualized. It's all about that individual student's needs. And we want to keep that in mind as we write that and plan for the students. So this plan, like I had talked about, it's going to look at present level. So it's going to look at how that student is currently participating and functioning in the classroom, in the general education curriculum, how they might be doing on some of the curriculum tests and different ways that they measure progress. We're going to look at how they might be participating in different areas of the school day, how their communication status may be currently, or what their social emotional status looks like. So we're gathering all that information we know right now about them. And then those goals that are going to be developed are going to really target those areas in need for that student. So that's why that present level is important, is that we not only look at the student's strengths, but we really look at those areas of that are challenges where that student may need more support. And then we're going to drive goals based off of that so that we can make sure that we're really hitting those areas for that student to help them be supported. We're going to look at some different supports through accommodations, as well as testing or assessment accommodations, just to make sure that that child is supported throughout their day. And then we'll look at the services. So we'll look at, special education service. Maybe they're receiving some speech therapy from the speech therapist or occupational therapy. So we're going to look at those recommendations by the team and the minutes that they would recommend and the frequency that those will take place. And then we're going to, sum it all up with a placement decision. So we're going to look at where can that student best be educated at, and that's going to vary based on each individual child, as I had talked about. And you'll see some children who participate, the majority of their day is within the general education environment with a little bit of special ed support. You may have a student who spends more time out in a one-to-one or a small group classroom working on some of their more specific needs, or you may have students who end up being placed in a program such as one that would be provided by SEEDA that provides some more intense services that are more designed to meet some of those more unique needs of students that the district itself isn't able to meet. And we'll talk about SEEDA here at the end and their role in all of this, but that's kind of where the placement decision can go. But again, it goes back to least restrictive environment, making sure that the child is being educated alongside their typical peers as much as possible. And then, like I said a couple of times already, it's all about helping that student make educational progress, helping them grow and learn and really benefit from the school system. And then at the end here, we like to look at the rhythm of review. So there's a couple of different things in place to make sure that we're meeting regularly, discussing the students' needs and planning for them to be successful. So that first one is the IEP review. This is going to happen annually. So this will be, once a year before, the expiration date of the IEP, the team will come together. We'll outline the plan. We'll talk about it as team members. And remember, parents are an important part of that team. We're going to review progress and plan for that year to come, make any adjustments that may need to be made. So that's a really important process that keeps us, connected and keeps us to making sure that we're really reflecting and providing for that student what they need. The next one is the reevaluation rhythm of review. So that's going to occur every 3 years. And the purpose of this is to bring the team back together to look at students' eligibility, to make sure that it's still accurately reflecting that student's needs in the classroom and in the educational setting, and then make any changes that are necessary. So this process could be a little bit longer, it could be shorter. It really depends on the needs of the child. Like the initial evaluation, we're going to come back together. We're going to talk about the evaluation. We're going to lay out what we think we need to gather based on what we already know, and then we're going to conduct those assessments. So it could look a little different because there is more pre-existing knowledge about a child, but like I said, it's all dependent on the individual. And then the most important to note is that these can be requested, and they can occur outside of the regularly occurring times. So as parents, you're able to call an IEP meeting if you feel like your student isn't making progress and you want to get the team together to talk about that and maybe plan differently. You have that right and ability. We can also come together as a team if the student's making tons of progress and they're meeting their goals and we need to adjust their programming because they're really excelling in that current situation. So we have that ability to meet and discuss. And then same thing with the evaluation. Like I talked about earlier, that you may see an evaluation come up outside of that 3-year window to add a service, or maybe a student was receiving occupational therapy and they've done, made a lot of good progress. They're not necessarily needing that support anymore. We may call an evaluation for the occupational therapist to look at that child's needs and then decide if, continued service is necessary. And then finally here, I just want to mention SEEDA really quickly. So they're kind of an extension of our district. SEEDA stands for the Special Education District of Lake County, and they provide services and support for the 31 county school districts within Lake County. And this looks a little bit different depending on the needs, but I know just in my role, like we meet, once a month with all the different district directors of special education or our coordinators for special education. We all come together, receive some training from SEEDA, have a chance to kind of communicate and stay in touch. So we have that regular rhythm, which is really helpful. And it's a nice professional arm that we have available to us. But they also work with our students in some different ways. SEEDA has some school-based programs. So they have programs that are in their own buildings that are designed to meet certain needs of children. So this could look like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Some students with autism who might have more severe autism, where the support in that educational setting is going to be more intense, and they're going to need more services or a smaller classroom or more structure. It might look different than what we provide or are able to provide here in the district. So we would utilize SEEDA in that type of program to support a student. They also have what they refer to as their sector programs. These programs are based out in member school districts. So I believe up until last year, Diamond Lake did have a program in district. So basically how that program will work is it houses students with similar educational needs from all the districts that are a part of SEEDA. So it could be 5 students, and one might be a West Oak Intermediate School student, and 4 could be from Mundelein or Fremont or Round Lake. It just varies based on that student's needs or the different needs that are out there. So that's some different options that they have that way to support student needs. They also have their transition program for those students who are 18 to 22 to support that, that transition from school out into, the community. They also provide itinerant services. So this is kind of where that hearing comes in. We currently have a hearing itinerant that services students in our district that's part of SEEDA. She'll come in a day a week, work with those students, work with the students' teams to make sure that those students are being supported. Typically their services are more spread out just because they're not as frequently as occurring, so that they cover more districts as opposed to just being in one district full time. And then they also offer some evaluation services to their district. So help us with some of our early childhood evaluations, potentially some bilingual evaluations. If we have a student who primarily speaks Spanish, they can help be a part of that. They'll help with audiological and vision screenings and assessments, and just providing support. So they're really working just to support all these districts and make sure, like we are, that the students in Lake County have what they need to be successful. That's really what it boils down to. So it's a little bit about SEEDA. And that's really all I have for tonight. I know I went through it pretty quickly, but this is a great time. If you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat box. We do have Daisy Carrera here to translate if necessary, and we'll just answer them as they come in. Thank you again for attending.
Ahorita